Hello, 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 everybody. It is so good to see all of your digital non-existent faces in the chat. This is our third and final panel for Wednesday, May 19th, day 1 of 2 of Roll for Solidarity, uplifting Asian and Black creatives in tabletop roleplay games. The topic of this panel is language, race, and performance, where our 4 lovely panelists, led by our great panel mod, discuss the connections and distinctions between language, identity, and role-play games. So as a reminder, we do have a donation goal here. We smashed through the donation goal of $1,000 by like the beginning of our first panel, and we had that goal for the entirety of the charity stream. So who knows where we'll be? We currently have a goal set for 2,000. We're at 1,510. So let's see how far we can go for the final panel of the first day. In terms of the charity funds, we are raising money for 2 amazing causes. The first is the Tamir E. Rice Foundation, which is seeking funds to renovate the Tamir Rice Afrocentric Cultural Center into a safe and nurturing space for children in Cleveland, Ohio, as well as advocating for police reform in Cleveland, Ohio. And the second cause is emergency relief funds for Hawaii, sex workers and survivors, organized by Affirm Hawaii, which is an anti-imperialist and anti-colonialist feminist organization that fights for women's self-determination in Hawaii. So I am Connie. I'm in the back. I'm the GM and executive producer behind Transplanar RPG, which is hosting this shindig. We're an all-trans POC-led, 100% homebrew D&D 5th edition live streamed actual play campaign. But that's not the focus of this panel at all. And with that, I'm going to pass along introductions and plugs to our lovely panel mod. First, Kappa, take it away.
Hi everyone. If you have not been here all day today, my name is Christian. I go by Kappa in the TTRPG space. You can find me on Twitter at @TheKappaChris, where my whole platform is centered around uplifting and making spaces for marginalized voices and communities. So this is wonderful to be part of Roll for Solidarity, because this is right at my wheelhouse of what I want to do with my voice. So I will be your moderator for today. It was really for the convenience and my schedule, but I'd like to think that it's my degree in language studies that brought me to this panel. So I'm just going to hold that in my heart right now. Joining me today, we have 4 lovely, wonderful panelists to talk to you about language identity in the TTRPG sphere. And so we're going to go around counterclockwise, starting in the top left corner of the Twitch stream, starting with Devin. Yep, that is you. I'm sorry to bring this on you, but someone's got to go first.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name's Devin. I use they, them pronouns. And I am a linguist, musician, ethnomusicologist, otherwise studier and purveyor of languages and sounds across the universe, and also sign language. I am the artistic director of Shout Minnesota, an all-trans and gender-diverse chorus centered on creating a space for trans voices in the Twin Cities area. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Shout Minnesota. I am also coming up on the least active member of the official Transplanar RPG Discord server, which I have a message queued up for the server. There it goes. Yeah, did it still work? Okay. Connie, thank you for not disabling that command. It's a wonderful, wonderful place full of wonderful, wonderful people. If you want to keep talking about the things that us as panelists are talking about, of course, the chat is a wonderful place to do so, but the chat will be gone at the end of the stream. So I encourage you to join the Discord server if you'd like to continue these conversations about race, about identity, TTRPG, share pictures of your pets. My pet's cuter than yours. And just have a good time.
Dare you.
Prove me wrong then if you think your pet's better than mine.
It's not that panel. That panel comes later. Moving clockwise, we are going to introduce Honey.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for the invite. I'm sitting up here, nervous as can be, to be talking with such amazing people that are doing amazing things in the TTRPG community. So, very excited for this conversation. I'm just Honey. I write games, I play games, and I run games for a lot of people. I am, my day job, I'm a cybersecurity professional, and I work with strategies to make things more secure, as well as my passion is keeping children and minors safe online. So I do educational programs, speak in schools, and things like that to help protect people online, specifically children. I am a advocate for disability and medical challenges, and I do a lot of charity events and organize work around that, especially not just physical disabilities and accessibility challenges, but also language disabilities and accessibility challenges within the workspace. I am a huge advocate for making things accessible for both our onshore and offshore partners. Um, but other than that, I like to use gaming and storytelling as a way to give people a platform to use their voices and tell stories with other people. So I'm excited about today's conversation.
Thank you, honey. And again, moving clockwise, I'd like to introduce Pi. Sorry, Pi, please introduce yourself. I'm not introducing you. What am I saying? I haven't done this before.
You're not introducing me? This is ridiculous. I'll be in my trailer until I'm introduced properly. Okay.
Oh no, I messed up.
It's basically what I do with words. I talk trash on the internet with my words. Hi everyone. I'm Pi. You can find me on Twitter at the Fung Fu Pi. I'm also a member of the cohort that is Dicey Amazons. One of the head producers with them. And what we do is we basically take our personalities and our love for games and talking trash to each other and about life and put it on the internet. And we have fun, play fun games. We're going to be playing some fun games this Sunday, I think. Candy has the week off, so I think we're going to be playing some fun games. You just heard Kalia drop some knowledge, some hot, fiery knowledge on everyone a second ago. And yeah, we're basically here to just show you that, you know, we have a table we built literally with our own hands, and you're welcome at it. Let's break bread.
And that brings us to Agatha. Agatha, please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Agatha. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the co-host of the podcast and stream Asians Represent, where you can find us on Twitch at AZNS Represent. Oh no, AZNS Rep, and then you can also find us just on anywhere you can get podcasts. We talk about topics in the mostly tabletop, but also analog gaming community from an Asian perspective. So we have all Asian cast, all Asian producers. Mostly it's Daniel, our producer, but I'm also I'm hopping on that, and then we interview people. There we have a show called The Wrap Up that happens every Friday on our Twitch channel, where we just talk about whatever has been going on in the community. We've done like a series on Magic the Gathering recently, so if you care about things like that, Strixhaven, you know, all that hullabaloo, you can check out our video on demand as well, which is on YouTube. And again, if you search up Asians Represent, you'll be able to find us. I am also a game writer. I'm a cultural consultant, specifically for East Asian cultures. I am also a sensitivity reader and a Chinese to English translator. So those are some of the things I do. You can find me on all the Asians Represent stuff, and you can also find me on Twitter at Mighty Shrimp with 2 Ys.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this. Before we get into the conversation, some housekeeping things. Exclamation Point Charity will link you to the 2 charities we're bringing up, as Connie had mentioned. Right now, we are sitting at $1,535 out of $2,000 for our overall goal over the 2 days. So let's go ahead and smash that goal. Second, if you are in chat and you want to ask a question, you're more than welcome to do so. I might miss it, but I will also be looking for questions that will progress the conversation in interesting avenues. So you can do that. Throw into chat. You can tag me if you want, so will for sure see it, because I'm monitoring hella chats right now. And with that, let's get into the conversation. Everyone ready?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, talking about language, let's start with a little bit about every one of our panels here. What languages do you speak / sign? How did you learn them? And what languages have you been assumed to speak in sign?
I can start. So this is a funny question for me because my mother tongue, I guess, is Mandarin, and it used to be a little bit of Taiwanese as well. My family is from Taiwan, but not really anymore. I don't know that anymore. But the funny thing is, um, a lot of times people come up to me at grocery stores, especially, and they assume that I speak Mandarin, and then they start asking me questions about like, oh, where do I find shampoo, and things like that. Well, actually, first of all, they'll ask me in Mandarin, "Do you speak? Do you speak Mandarin?" And then I'm always like, "Yes, I do," and yeah, so that's my experience with being assumed to be Mandarin speaking, and then also that being accurate. And I know that it's a very different experience for other people who are East Asian, who are like, I'm not, don't assume that I am. But in my case, I am. So it's a lot of old people, a lot of new immigrants coming up and assuming that of me. I have, however, one time on the subway, had someone come up to me, very drunk, a white guy, and speak to me in Japanese. And I'm like,
Wow.
bye. So that's my
Wow.
experience. I also speak
Wow.
English. That's
I definitely resonate with you on older people walking up to you and assuming that you speak a language. I lived in Florida for a really long time, and so because I have locks, people assume that I'm Haitian and thus speak Creole. And so I speak absolutely no Creole. I took a year of French, which is that's about all I have for you. So yeah, I can't even explain to them that I don't speak that language. And yeah, it happens all the time. The occasional white person even walked up to me and just assumed that I could help someone out who needed translation. Yeah, myself though, I speak English poorly, and I've been telling myself and other people that I speak Japanese, which is like very much on a basic level. I'm a toddler in Japanese.
Mm. I suppose Japanese might be a good segue to me. Hi, I'm Devin. I use they them pronouns. I am an English and Japanese speaker. I am, and I've learned Japanese. I'm a native English speaker, and I've been learning Japanese through a combination of formal schooling, self study, and a Japanese immersion camp that I have attended for 2 years and worked at for 5. Yeah, 5. Um, we go there every summer, and as a counselor, it's my job to immerse uh, villagers ages 7 to 18 in Japanese. And there's camps. It's with Concordia Language Villages, if you've ever heard of it. Um, and there's camps for all sorts of different languages, including Russian and Dutch and Korean and Arabic and Chinese and Japanese. Um, it's a wonderful time. I'm also learning through self-study in order of competency, Japanese Sign Language, American Sign Language, American Sign Language, Italian, Swahili, and Maori are all on my list of languages that I'm more or less dabbling in. And I speak a little bit of Spanish, but not enough to say anything beyond I don't speak Spanish, I speak Japanese, uh, which came to a head a few years ago when so I'm biracial, right? And so my skin color is very neutral, I guess. And so people, this one older man, older Mexican man actually, came up to me and started speaking to me in fluent Spanish, and I'm like, lo siento, no hablo español, hablo japonés, pero no hablo español. Like, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. I speak Japanese, but not Spanish. And he's like, oh, which is kind of an awkward experience. I've never had, besides that, I've never been assumed to speak a language, uh, because a lot of my experience has been that Black people are assumed to speak English here in America for the most part. Um, and maybe that's just me in the Midwest up here. But I mean, Pi, I know you had an experience down in Florida. But other than that, everyone that speaks Japanese, that I speak Japanese back to, has been pleasantly surprised. I have yet to have the speaking shit behind my back and me jumping in like, "Mo yitteru koto wakaru yo."
Oh, but that day is coming. I can
Oh,
tell
I'm
you.
sure it
You
is.
know
I'm
it's
sure it
coming.
is.
Savor the moment, Devin. Savor it, and then take a picture of it, and then post it on the internet.
Oh yeah. I'll
Selfie.
make a Twitter just for that.
Make an NFT of it.
Oh no. That was a
Oh
joke.
my
Please don't
God.
use NFTs. Honey, how about you?
I love language because I love words. According to my mom, before I even spoke English, she would have like public broadcasting network classical stations, and I would just be copying whatever they were saying. And she'd have to tell me, "Okay, sweetheart, I don't speak. What is that? Just that? I don't speak that. You're gonna have to say milk. Do you want milk? Okay, say milk." So, I have been speaking from a very young age by necessity. I'm fluent in Southern, which doesn't seem like a language, but it is. Southern English. I started Spanish classes from the age of about 6 or 7. I studied biblical or ancient Greek at the age of 8. I felt like I was tricked into that. I said I wanted to study ancient Greek. The only class available was a college level biblical Greek class, and my mom did not tell me anything about levels. And so I'm sitting there with my books and my highlighters in a class full of adults. And all the adults by the end of the class had dropped out, and I was still there. Because I was getting my homework done and showing up and wanting to learn. I spent all of my teenage years from about 13 to 18 living in Japan. So I was speaking Japanese at a fairly intermediate level slash. I'm not fluent in race car, but I think somebody was saying something. Um, my first public singing performance was singing in Japanese and Spanish before I've ever sung in English publicly. Um, I study languages to relax because I believe that the level of empathy necessary to communicate with the human experience starts with not only what you are taught from as a child, but what you learn so that you can hear other people share their love. So, one thing I was very passionate about was how frustrated people would get with English as a second language people. And I would have to say, do you know how difficult it is to translate one language into another before you can communicate your feelings? So, why can't I take the time to try to learn the language of this person's heart so that we can have a better exchange? Um, I went through a medical situation which did neurological damage, so a lot of fluency that I had gained in languages um, became a lot more challenging. And so I am relearning quite a few things and decided to add Korean to my list of things as well because I love the language structure and how poetic things are in that language. So, yeah, that's my experience with language. Like I said, I love words. So, I can pretend to speak French because I was born in Louisiana. Um, and I am a mimic, which is both good and bad. Um, which means if I listen to somebody speak in a certain cadence or with a dialect or whatever, I will unconsciously be copying them. And that's how I say my pronunciation isn't naturally good. It's just that I heard this person say it in this way, so I mimic it. Um, so I can pretend to speak French and Creole. If I'm reading it, I don't know what I'm saying, but I can pretend. Um, but yeah, that's my language. I'm not going to talk about how Lord of the Rings came out and I sat down and tried to learn Elvish for a minute and bragged about it in a freestyle rap. But
Yeah, so we're not going to talk about that, but
I'm not going to count that.
so I'm glad you didn't bring it up. But that's really cool. I love the backgrounds that everyone's bringing to this particular conversation. So now everyone, you know where these folks are coming from. We're gonna tie it into the TTRPG sphere. So have you played a character either in a TTRPG or as another type of actor? Doesn't necessarily need to be TTRPGs, but just in a presentation, will you, that speaks differently from you in language, from your base, neutral, I would say. How did you approach these characters and how were they received? Not everyone at
Yes.
once, please.
I have. I know everyone's so polite. I have. Though I've never done an accent because that makes me very uncomfortable. I have definitely changed up my cadence, and also changed up just the way that I talked. So either speeding up or slowing down my speech, and or raising or lowering my pitch. And I think certain things will signal a different kind of personality, which I have done. So, for example, if I'm talking like this, then I think people will have a general assumption about the kind of character that I'm playing. So it's like things like that, and they generally work well, I would say, to convey a very, um, very straightforward kind of stereotypical baselines for what people can assume out of my characters.
Yeah, no, totally. I don't know enough about accents to try to pull that off. And when I do, it's like it's just offensive. It's just offensive to everyone involved, even the listeners. So I'll do like voices, but I won't try to mimic like someone else's culture. I will try to mimic like a personality. So like Agatha was saying, like a I don't know, maybe like a snobby person, or I don't know, someone who's like really like grouchy or something like that. But I won't try and make that person be from a certain like location that's tethered to like our planet right now because that's not me. I'm not talented like that. I also don't have the control to keep that going longer than a minute or two. So
Very interesting. Yeah. Devin, Honey, any input?
Yeah, I've seen so some of y'all in chat have been watching Transplant RPG every Saturday at 3 p.m. CST for a couple hours. Um, and you'll know my character Manaya that I play for that campaign. And she has, if I were meaner to myself, I'd call it half-assed. But I'm gonna beat around the bush and call it a sort of mishmash of different British accents. And that was very intentional because I wasn't going to, because like I could sit here and speak English with a Japanese accent or speak English as if I was someone who learned English as a second language. But as Pi was saying, that's just offensive on all fronts, for everyone. And so whenever I want to use a different accent, I try my best to choose an accent of a place where English is the primary spoken language, whether that's various places in America, various places in Britain or England, Australia, and other places that where English is primarily spoken. Um, and very rarely will I ever delve into something like Italian or Russian as accents or French, because those are places where English is not primarily spoken, but places that are still in the West where English as a whole is the sort of primary language. And so with those, I tread carefully, but I still tread. Maybe, and maybe it's not the best in the world, but I'm here to learn otherwise, if that's the case. Other than
has anyone
that,
ever called you out? Sorry to cut you off. I'm just curious.
not for accent. Um, my character in Transplanter is from a place called Uhanahi, which is based on Hawaii, Samoa, Maori cultures, Polynesian cultures in general. And so I was called out, tried to be called out, uh, for playing a character based on those cultures without having that heritage within me myself. To which I responded, yes, my character is from this place, but I build her to be more representative of the Black experience, the feminine experience, the trans experience, than this culture that I have done a good amount of research into, but I'm still relatively unfamiliar with. So,
Actually, I want to amend what I said before about not doing accents because I just remembered. I feel like I have done accents and specifically a very stereotypical Chinese accent, sort of, when I was playing with a group where everyone was like from kind of like Chinese or Chinese adjacent backgrounds. Chinese adjacent. Is that okay? Well, I don't know. Anyway, y'all know what I mean. And so within that context, like my mom speaks with an accent, and then my friends, parents, or like people they know speak with that accent. So for us, it was more like oh yeah, like this is a familiarity kind of thing, and then you bring up that kind of vibe as opposed to like I'm representing something else. And I think that's the only context that I have done it personally, and I've been comfortable with it, and it was actually very it was really nice because it grounded us specifically in our experiences in a way that if I didn't do the accent, it wouldn't have. So I think there is that kind of value in it, but only for very specific circumstances.
for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like growing up, my sister's dad's family was all from St. Thomas and the islands. So like hearing, the island accent is something that I can try and pull up way easier than trying to pull up like a British accent. But yeah, it definitely recalls like that nostalgic feeling of like sitting in someone's kitchen and just, hearing all of the accents.
And Honey, how do you bring your extensive background to the TTRPG space?
I love this question because there's two ways to look at it. I've explored more cultures and languages and cadences and so on when I'm doing collaborative writing with people. When I have to speak, a lot of people don't know it, but I had to be trained to speak about two or three keys below my natural speaking voice because it is higher and very youthful sounding. In order to be taken more seriously is not much different, but in order to be taken more seriously, I cannot sound like a baby. But what that allowed me to do is play around a lot with voices and accents and dialects. But my go-to was never an accent driven by someone not being familiar with English. For example, I have never endeavored to mimic in my speech patterns a Japanese accent because again there's nuances to the idea of a Japanese accent because there are so many different regions in Japan. You can mimic what you were exposed to, but it doesn't come across as genuine. Now if I sing in Japanese, I'm using pronunciation and so on that I have heard in order to respect the language. um, Same with anything like that. So I have brought languages and I have brought voices to the table, but I think it's because I didn't grow up with a lot of television, so I have a lot of different voices in my head and they just come out as the when I'm doing characters. Um, Sharing my experiences, like I didn't learn an African accent because I was around a lot of African people. I learned an African accent from a lot of creepy African men following me in different places. And so, hey, I think you should go get some coffee with me. Hey, why aren't you married? That kind of stuff you learn to do, and it will make its way into different characters that I play because that was a life changing experience. I think there's a fine line between mimicry and mockery. And if your usage of even a tone of voice is to elicit a psychological response of being able to marginalize a group based on culturally acceptable standards of somebody being less than or so on, that is completely different than, okay, I may be playing a himbo or a herbo, but the reason they speak with a southern accent is because that is where they're from, not because somehow someone with a southern accent, even if it sounds like someone is speaking banjo, that is not directly connected to their level of intelligence or critical thinking skills. And so I think the reason why you make the choices vocally or linguistically matters in how you uh, apply that at your table. And someone said something very interesting. I'm playing at a table with people with similar backgrounds. Only they would understand that the usage of this accent is done for this reason or that reason. So, even when I have played characters that were from Hawaii, because I lived there for quite some time, they were never Hawaiian. They were people who had lived there that might have their speech slightly colored, not accented, but slightly colored by common vernacular and slang. But I'm not from there. I did not, I mean, I was adopted because in Hawaii, you get adopted multiple times, whether you want to or not, by their various aunties and uncles. And they feed you really well. But it made me smile. And for me, paying homage to all the people that made a difference in my life through the stories that I tell is very important to me.
Thank you. I'm really glad to have y'all's perspective. Agatha given a little bit of a golf clap there. Yeah, this is. I think it's really important that we bring these experiences to our spaces. Um, yeah, it's and there's always that really fine line between like you said, mimicry versus mockery. Who are you representing with this accent, this voice? Because primarily it's really hard to represent a character in a TTRPG outside of your voice. Like you can describe what this person looks like, but most of the personality comes from how you act, how you get into the physicality of things, how you speak. So making sure that we have and bring in lots of different perspectives and stories to TTRPGs, I think is one of the great things about the TTRPG space. So, moving forward with our questions here, have any characters you have played affect how you speak or act outside of the world they exist in? If so, in what ways? And we'll get into the deeper question beyond this once everyone's spoken.
Yeah, I mean, I can immediately speak to this. As I mentioned before, I work at the Concordia Language Villages, language immersion camps. And at some of the camps, at most of the camps, when on your first day, whether you're there for a week, 2 or 4 weeks, you choose a new name. Um, and you're not instructed to keep your real name secret, but everyone generally does. And I mean, I have it pulled up right now, but a friend of mine, Meredith Hansen, giving credit where credit is due, wrote her graduate thesis on this idea of names and role play and identity and what it means to assume a new name
That's
and
awesome.
how that affects um, who you are, really. So, like for example, uh, when I first went to the language villages, I went there for 1 week, and I remember like 3 still images from it. But anyway, the second year I went for 2 weeks, and that was when I really started to realize, maybe unconsciously, the potential of what even just a new name can do, um, let alone attempting to speak a new language and learning this language through immersion and like task-based learning, right? Uh, And lo and behold, the next year I started working there, and Meredith Hansen gave a whole sort of panel like speech about her thesis and about the research that she's been doing in the language villages. And it just reflects everything that I experienced of when I'm at this language village and I have a new name, I get to be a new person. And so I unconsciously and now consciously put make a new person for myself and strive to be that person, right? Whether that person and that person might be someone who's more outgoing. That person may be might be someone who speaks up more, who's willing to get up on stage and do a melodrama, completely improvise about the male of the day, or um, and just otherwise perform in a completely safe space where everything is for your own benefit. And that's mimicked or mirrored a lot in TTRPG spaces, I think, if you have a good group. Um, because it's basically the same thing, especially if your character speaks differently from you, whether they sign a sign language or whether they speak in a different accent or with a different tone. Even just being called by a different name uh, puts, according to this thesis, puts your mind in a completely different space where you can be this different person. And her studies showed that the more you come back to the language villages, the more you play as this character, the more you start to adopt those traits in real life. So, I mean, I worked there for, what did I say, 5 years? 5 years. And there are villagers who come back every single year who have been there for anywhere from 2 years to 10. And I've been watching them grow over the years as they come back. And they've told me stories about how when they come to camp and they have this new name, they get to be outgoing, they get to be more gay, they get to own their culture more, and they get to be more of themselves. Uh, and it all starts with the name and the language. Um, so I think there's power in names, and I think there's power in language, and I think there's power in creating a space separate from this world where you get to create a character that, whether intentional or not, has some traits that maybe you want to see in yourself. Alongside that, I'll give you my prime example, my character Manaya, who is a woman, a trans woman, but a woman, nonetheless, because I want to be more in touch with my feminine side, which is something that has been uh, I've not been able to have for many, many years, being a trans feminine person. Um, she also has very dark skin, which I have been disconnected from my Black heritage for like 20 years. So I want to reconnect with that, and I do that through her. She's also very tall, and I get a lot of height dysphoria. I really don't like how tall I am. I have Norwegian in my blood, so we're tall, and I hate that. And so I play Manaya as a tall person so that I can come to terms with something that cannot be changed barring somebody taking my kneecaps, which I've asked for several times, and it doesn't work, trust me. Um, so yeah, and I mean, Manaya is not the only character I've played in a TTRPG space or as an actor by any means. Uh, and every single character I've played has either unconsciously or consciously uh, had some sort of traits that I wanted to see in myself, that the more I play that character, the more I learn how to do that in real life. Because without Manaya, without me going to the language villages and speaking Japanese for 5 weeks every year, I would not be this outgoing. I would not be on this panel. I probably wouldn't even have realized I was trans. Um, I mean, I don't know. I believe in the power of roleplay and
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah, I absolutely resonate with you. To take a step away from the tabletop role playing game just for a second, going back to what you were saying about like power in a name, I was a drag king for like 4 years in my like late teens, early 20s. And so like getting into drag, getting into my costume, putting on facial hair, like packing, like for a while, not for a while, I have like my drag name tattooed on me because of the way that it made me feel. It made me come out of my shell. It made me to talk to people. And like this might be a bit of a stretch, but like I had a really bad stutter growing up. And so being in the spotlight and I got to host shows and do all of these things because of this opportunity, like really got me to a point where like I can be who I am right now and like not have the same like debilitating fear of like my stutter, you know, rearing its head, you know, during conversation. Um, yeah, and it's absolutely insane. And so, also going back to what you were saying about like taking on the traits of your character. I play a character Dejori in one of our homebrew games at Dicey Amazons, and Dejori is like a type of character that like lets things fall off of her back, you know, which is not something that I personally am good at. I hold on to it and I take it personally, and Dejori doesn't. And I think that the way that she approaches the world and just kind of expects the world to just do things for her is something that I definitely like. And it is in the way that you like you talk and the tone of your voice and the particular words that you choose when you talk to someone to convey that yes, whatever I'm saying, whatever I'm requesting has already happened in my mind. I'm just waiting for you to catch up to it. You know, so yeah, there's a lot of power in that. I definitely agree with you, Devin.
Thank you for sharing these very personal examples of how do you use language in these spaces. Agatha, honey, anything?
Okay. Yeah, I can go. I think I started playing role-playing games 5 years ago, I think. And it has been a continuous process of playing as many different kinds of people as I can. And finding what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy playing, but also discovering things about myself. For example, I think for a while, all I played were very physically attractive men, and that is itself an interesting thing. That's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is I realized as I was playing these people that I was manifesting like some like toxic behavior and ways of thinking that I was like, why am I such an asshole? Whenever I play these games, am I allowed to swear? Okay, I hope so. Well,
You
anyway,
Go ahead.
so I was like, why am I such an asshole when I'm playing these characters? That's very strange. But only when I'm playing these like cis male characters. And I was like, what's going on? And it led me to a lot of self-reflection where I was like, oh, okay, I think I've definitely internalized some things that I never knew that I internalized until I was playing a character from that perspective. Where it was like I assumed that being a very attractive cis man meant that I'm an asshole. Sorry. Um, and I'm not gonna say like how much of that is like society telling me that, and how much of that is me, like my personal experience, and how much of that is just me being like kind of biased against people specifically. But that was a very interesting experience because I was just playing the game to have fun, and I wanted to play a hot person because I had a Pinterest board. But through that experience, I was like, oh, I need to reassess some of the things that I think about the world and also what I think about myself because I didn't think that I had these assumptions, but I clearly did. So I think for me, and it's yeah, I a lot of these kind of experiences every time I pick up a different kind of personality and hone in on it in a character, I end up learning something new either about being empathetic to someone from that perspective or learning something about myself and how I see the world when I'm playing something that I assumed is different from me, but is in fact not so far away after all.
Turns out it was you the whole time. I
Yep.
love that.
It's like I
Yeah.
wanted to do a fun voice. Oh wait, I'm learning about myself in ways I did not expect. Oh no.
Wait,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
character was always me? Always has been.
Yeah. Just it's like a learning. The more you know, reading Rainbow all the time.
But
Yeah.
that is awesome that you are able to think to pull yourself back from the situation and observe and learn from it, and I'm assuming taking steps to reevaluate and recenter yourself in some place that is better.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, honey?
I love to hear people's stories, so I was like, how long can I milk this out before they come to me to answer? Um, so again, I will start by two ways. I enter a lot of online communities through collaborative writing, huge communities and so on, forums and all that kinds of stuff. Um, so I would notice gaps in representation and be very, very curious about why those gaps are there. Or I would see, quite frankly, very tropey, stereotypical, and what I call irresponsible portrayals of different human experience that I wasn't quite sure why it made me uncomfortable, and so I did a lot of research. Um, if I noticed that everybody wanted to play, for whatever reason, an MTF trans character, and it was almost at a fetishized level, I would go in and say, well, that's not the only trans experience. Why aren't we seeing characters that are MTF or non binary and so on? I wouldn't see them, so I'd create them. And we do so much research that sometimes would hurt my heart to a point where I would say, how dare I not tell these stories that need to be told? So that connects to languages because I would notice representation. Okay, we're going to do a super, how can I put this? Only ivory focused thing, and everyone is super good looking. I said, but statistically speaking, there had to be some seasoning in here. And so I would do research about, which countries connected to other countries at what time in history and what could actually be, the product of that. And the nomadic people and the indigenous people, and I would endeavor to tell those stories. Now, that's from a writing perspective because I do not have to visually or vocally portray someone else's experience, but I can expose people based on the research that I have done to realities that hopefully make them educate themselves. You know, receiving pushback on saying this person's pronouns are X, Y, and Z, and someone would say, "Well, to not confuse people, can we just put this or that?" And I'd be like, "It's not confusing. Like, it's not." Um, so that being so important to me, when I joined the TTRPG community with the streamers and the gaming and charity streams and so on, um, most of the time I don't have a lot of time to create a character. And so I'm just sitting up here saying, what would be a kind and engaging character that could leave an impact that lifts people instead of makes them feel down? And then I go with that. Halflings named, you know, Bisqualia Honeysuckle, aka Biscuits. And, even dealing with that, she ended up with a certain cadence in a way that she spoke because I'm just thinking this down home individual with like 20 something siblings and maybe short, but has two swords, honey butter and gravy. Sometimes she feels sweet, sometimes she feels savory. And when I first played her,
Bars. Straight bars.
sorry,
Oh my gosh, what the
it's
heck?
hard. It's hard for me not to rhyme. I write a lot of poetry. So
I mean, go off, right?
so I'm going to use her to connect to language because she was a very interesting character. When I first created her, I thought I'm going to muddle in some European-esque-ish, accent here because that's what people are more familiar with. And when I first played her, she kind of, I played around with different, the Irishish kind of where in the world could she be from? You don't know. I just knew that she had, dark brown skin and her hair worn in two Cocoa Puffs. That's all I knew. Um, and it didn't quite work. That's what I'm saying. It didn't quite work with the heart of the character. And I would drop the accent, not because I couldn't still do it, but it just wasn't working. Then I brought her back to a charity stream that kind of catapulted me in the middle of all of this stuff. And I said, okay, how can I do this? Somebody drew her, and I almost cried because it was the first time I had seen a black halfling with thick curly hair worn into poofs, and she was just the cutest thing ever. Um, and they said, "Can you introduce your character?" And it just came out, "Hello, my name is Biscuity Honeysuckle, aka Biscuits." And I was like, "Yep, there she is." Um, Same with playing a cat. They said, "What kind of cat do you want to play?" I said, "Something with a lot of fur. I just want maximum floof." And they said, "Okay, what is her name?" Thought about it, thought about it, and my music loving behind just wrote down Eartha Kitty.
Yep.
And
Yes.
Yes.
and I connect, and she was the that system's equivalent of a bard, and how she spoke. It was the enunciation. It was the alliteration. It was the volume of the speech and how firmly or gently she would speak. It was me having to sing every single stream. But I put that on myself, and I was like, you know what? Maybe this is your self punishment for something you did when you were 8. But, anyways, and I love that because I could be like, so we're on an adventure. We're on an adventure. And let that purr, without me trying to exactly do Eartha Kitt's voice, that intonation, that clarity. It brought the character to life and helped her connect with other people. Um, Also, it's an amazing voice to use when you want to communicate how upset someone is, you know. Those type of characters are near and dear to my heart because they resonated with people, you know. Um, and sometimes you make up accents and people tell me, where's this person from? It is a fantasy world. I don't know. That is just how they speak. But did you model it after this culture or not? I said, no. You told me to use a mouse company influenced Disney princess. I chose Bianca from Rescuers, okay? One, because the
That's
actress
bad,
is a
bitch.
fashion icon. And two, because Bianca is, to your point, and they're like, oh, well, how do you do her voice? I said, it's a lot of going around my house and confusing my dogs by saying, hello, darlings. Hello, darlings. Okay, I got it. And so getting on the, hello, darlings. I am Princess Leilani. And be able to go from there based on the, the, the rhythm and flow of a cadence that connects to the heartbeat of the character, I think, is how language for me and words help to shape the story, how you connect. Because if I'm a player, I'm going to connect to people.
I'm so here for this. Like, oh my
Yeah.
god.
Right? I'm here like we've hit every single question like past and future in this one answer. Honey, thank you so much.
Yeah, for
For
reals.
you bring up such really good points too, like looking at our next question. You kind of touched on this in your answer, but I would love to hear more thoughts about this from the rest of the crew. Using playing a character that doesn't share a facet of your identity can feel appropriative, right? How do you and again, you talk about this when you're writing, when it comes to your writing, honey. How do you do that? How if you do that, how do you do that? But Yeah, I'll throw it over to anyone who wants to jump in here with have you ever played a character that doesn't share a facet of your identity, and how has it affected you?
And also, I think I want to like add to that question.
Please
To
do.
kind of ask everyone else. It is it is it okay to play people from, like, for example, different cultural backgrounds, right? Because Devin, you said that like people were like trying to like call you out and stuff like that, and so like what? I guess my question is, like, for example, what gives me the permission to play someone that is also like from a marginalized community that I am not representative of? And is that, like, do I have more permission to do it because I'm also marginalized versus if it was a white person doing it? Because I think for me, in terms of like perception bias, like when I see, like, for example, if I were to see a white person, specifically, like if it was a cis white man playing someone from like an East Asian background, I'm immediately like, I'm not very comfortable with this. However, if it was someone who is from like another, for example, like if it was a South Asian person playing someone from an East Asian background, then I'm kind of like, okay, like how are they doing it? Like, is it, are they being respectful in doing it, or are they just like, you know, uh, uh, katana wielding, also patty hat wearing person? Like, you know, like, so I feel like I give more leeway depending on who they are, but then I'm also like, is that okay?
This is
Yeah,
a very
that's
important question. Yeah, is that okay?
yeah, that's definitely a question I ask myself, and I like in a lot of those cases where I'm like, if I was a straight white guy, would this be okay? And if the answer is no, I kind of taken it upon myself to go, I probably shouldn't do that, because like not to say that like I need to um I don't know, like police myself in the same way that I think that a lot of my people should be policing themselves. I think that I should hold myself to like the same standards. Like it's still kind of offensive. I'm not doing it with the right intent, or I could be, but I haven't been able to really think about that, to think my way through that part yet. So yeah, I'm still stuck on that question, which is the reason why like I haven't done any characters that are from a particular region that are different from me, because I'm just like, that feels like a joke that I heard on like BET Comic View, because like Black people definitely in the 90s like used a lot of Asian races as the butt of a lot of jokes. And I was a child, didn't know any better. I fell into that too. Like I know better now, I do better now. And just because I'm not white doesn't mean that those rules, I still wouldn't be offending someone.
Yeah, it's something that I've grappled with a lot, especially playing in Transplanter, because Connie has created a world where there are 8 very, very distinct nations and cultures, and 2 of them are original, but the other 6 are distinctly built on AAPI cultures and histories, right? And so when I was trying to approach creating a character that would fit in this world, I thought for a I didn't think for a very long time 'cause I'm a quick thinker, but I thought a lot, and I was conflicted a lot on what kind of character I wanted to play because I'm not Asian. I don't have any Asian blood, anywhere from Japan to a country that borders Europe that I don't remember the name of. Um, so I feel the least qualified, maybe not the least qualified, but maybe the least qualified out of everyone in our group to play someone who's from literally any of these cultures, real or fictional. Um, and so I don't know. The way I approach Manaya as a character is she is tall, she is black, and she is kind before she is from a culture based on Hawaii, Samoa, etc. And she just happens to be from there. And I leave it to Connie, who has done so much more research into those cultures and knows so much more than me, to inform me about how I can go about trying to represent this culture in a positive light and in a very sensitive way. Um, at the same time, there's still a part of me that feels bad every time I play her, because it's like, Manaya is not a name that any white person or any black person should ever have. It should be a Pacific Islander person, right? So I don't know. I grapple with it every day.
So this is a question again. I encourage people to do the research that they need to learn about different cultures so that they can gain the necessary empathy. But I think in the TTRPG community, where lines get muddled is between I'll say this, private exploration and public representation. That this is what I will say. I play more characters that share physical characteristics um, with me when I am on public streams and so on, because when I first played Biscuits, someone in the chat actually said they had never seen a black halfling before, and it really made an impact on them. A lot of people have a lot of stories about, like, they'll say, hey, I might be white, or I may be Asian, or I may be uh, from anywhere else in the world, and this black family took me in when I was at my lowest and helped raise me and so on. So I grew up with a lot of these things, but I still don't feel comfortable representing this in what I act to do. And I can relate to that because for me, I have similar stories, but about the Asian community, the ones that helped us out the most, the ones that when I was at my sickest would come and do things for me, even though, they didn't need to, and so on. And so I say, how do I pay homage to the things that have positively impacted my life? So I empathize with the struggle of, I can't play this character because I'm not from this background. And it's difficult for me mentally to ever recall having that challenge because I've never gone and sat down at a table and said, I want to play this character that comes from this background that has these similar traits of an actual culture. Because maybe the opportunity has never arisen. But it was like when I ran Harlem Unbound, which has a whole section about playing a person that is not of the same ethnic background for yourself, I had an all POC cast, and I encouraged them to do research about all the POCs, not just the black people, all the POCs who were in Harlem at that time. And people were doing research and learning things about Chinese immigrants or people from India and all these different places that happened to be there that you never see in the media. And they were able to create these amazing characters that joined this like one shot that I did that was basically about the dangers of not seasoning your food. But to tell an amazing story. And that is the advice I gave one person who came to me. I said, look up at the people at your table. They said, yeah. Do you see anyone from the country or the culture or so on that you are interested in trying to portray? If the answer is no, then you don't have that Jiminy Cricket conscious to kind of help you say, hey, maybe not this, or hey, this may not be a good idea. So it's just an interesting struggle that I see, but I do think there's a difference between private exploration. I don't think anyone should be like, hey, I've got this book in this amazing setting, but I don't want to play it with my friends at home because none of us are from this country. Well, take some time, explore it, learn this or that. Then get online and ask someone, hey, I have found out about X, Y, and Z. Is there anyone, a cultural sensitivity reader by chance, or someone who speaks this language who can help me understand what this means because we came up on this and blah da 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 da. But in our community, if you need someone from Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, any region of Asia, Hawaii, the Pacific Islands, Saipan, wherever it is, get on your Twitter or your social media and say, hey, I'm playing a game and I would love to have representation from this region. And you would be surprised at all of the hits you will get. And then you can ask that person from that culture, do you feel uncomfortable with me using this name? Do you feel uncomfortable with me using this appearance? And so on. Because 9 times out of 10, if you don't think you can do it responsibly, it's probably because you know you don't have the knowledge to do it. But if you are doing it responsibly, and Devin, I want to tell you this, and you do it very responsibly, take the opportunity to learn better and do better and explore that. Because one day you may find you are that representation that someone was looking for that allowed them to be more comfortable with their own roots.
Yeah, I love that. I wanted to add to that, Honey, because I think you bring up a really great point where it's if it's a public performance, so like we all, or I think all of us do actual plays that other people watch, right? So that's very different, obviously, from just doing it at your own private table with your own friends. I completely agree where that those are. One is where other people are watching you and then seeing the kind of representation that you can be presenting, and the other is it's much more personal. So I remember actually when Cartel came out, the game from Magpie Games, that was it caused a lot of, or a lot of people had a lot of, like, in my opinion, like racist backlash against it because it's from it's written by Latinx person about that kind of like Mexican experience in with this relationship with cartels, right? And then a lot of people are like, I'm not comfortable playing it because like I'm not Latinx and I didn't have that experience, and I don't want to be I don't want to like be disrespectful or to play into stereotypes. The backlash was about something else. It was about like, oh, well, you're just presenting it in such a negative way. Oh no.
The overlay's about to get messed up. It'll be fixed once he rejoins. There it
there we
goes.
go.
Okay,
Yay.
am I back?
Yes.
Yes.
Can
Yes,
you hear
are.
me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think I'm through the worst of it. That was rough. I heard most of everything people said, but yeah. I think I'm back. Hello.
Yeah,
Hello,
I
I'm
think
back.
you are too. We're good.
Okay. Oh, okay. So yes, I heard a lot of that and was like nodding my head, snapping, and trying to figure out my internet at the same time. So, I think what it boils down to, this whole question of whether it's okay or not, boils down to impact versus intention, right? So you intend, like, if you intend it to tell a story of a marginalized group, or a story and perspective that needs to be told, make sure you're doing your due diligence, right? You can't control the impact, but you can make the impact. So I want to say not necessarily softer, but understand where you're coming from if you are putting in the work. You're not going to be able to
Yeah.
please everyone, of course, but sorry, I just felt really moved by everything that people said, and wanted to add a couple 2 cents. One, to echo Devin, your insecurity, and thank you for sharing that very personal question, that very personal perspective. But to also what I've navigated in my personal life and my career, and bringing it into the TTRPG space and conversation that we're having right now.
Yeah. And
And-
just to oh, sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead. You were in the middle of a thought when Kappa came back, so
Oh, I'm
Go
so sorry.
ahead.
I didn't know.
No, it's all good.
That's
It's
all
all
right,
good.
that's all
Yeah. Just to finish my thought, I do also think so. I think first of all, I agree. And second of all, I think I actually had just like one addendum, which is to the thing about if you want to play someone from a specific background that you don't identify with or have grown up with, the thing about reaching out to people, I do kind of want to caution, like, to be mindful of how you're doing it, because I personally have been asked, and I'm sure everyone here has as well, to do a lot of emotional labor for strangers on the internet, just because I guess for me, I kind of get it, because I am co-hosting a podcast called Asians Represent. So I guess people would be like, so I have questions about Asians. But I think I do think that and this is obviously not like anything to you, Devin, because I think we can tell from this conversation that you are very respectful and you do a lot of research. So like, I just mean more in general. Like, I think, yes, reaching out to people who have these lived experiences is vital, but also I think sometimes, like, be mindful of whether they are open to doing that kind of emotional labor for you or not. So I think, like, yeah, like a Twitter call is great, because if you're like, I'm looking for this, if you want to help me out, then like reply in this thread, then you know like who already consented to it, as opposed to just sliding into DMs and being like, here's my long essay about how I want to write a game about feudal Japan. Give me all the info that I want for free. So I think, yeah, again, I guess I'm just here to say, great points, honey. I agree.
I will put this caveat. Don't be sliding in people's DMs with questions that you could just don't stay out of the DMs. Don't put your personal story. Don't put your horror stories. Don't send the essays. And if someone has said you can DM me, here is an etiquette tip. Ask, do you have the spoons, or insert whatever, the time, or are you open to a conversation at this time about X, Y, and Z? Don't just copy paste and be like, hey, here is my 15-page essay on why I think I should be allowed to do something I know I have no business doing. Be kind.
That part.
Yep. And if you are going to do that work, don't do it for free. Like we talked about this in the last panel, friggin' get paid for that kind of work, because it's like that's really important, and you should be compensated for one, the massive amounts of education you need to be able to speak on that, and two, for your time and effort.
Doesn't Twitter have a tip system now where you can just be like, hey, I'd love to educate you about this, but $5 might, help that a little bit.
$5? What? No, you better pay my light bill.
Devin,
really.
I'm learning you are always about the hustle when it comes to these things. Chat has already pointed it out. I appreciate it so much.
Although I have learned a lot about from characters that I've played, I've also learned a lot about characters that I've played with. So one of our characters, V, is the ultimate swindler, and always about the hustle.
Well,
I've learned a lot from her, just as much as I've learned from Manaya.
So I want to respect people's time here. We are coming up to the end of the stream, and I don't want to go over in case other people have stuff to do. So any final thoughts, a sentence or two before we outro and say goodbye to the first day of Roll for Solidarity?
I do want to add on a little bit to what Agatha was saying earlier about the TTRPG, about the cartel and everything like that. And say that safety plays a huge factor in this conversation, because whether it's a game for an audience or whether it's a home game, this sort of representation, whether good or bad or neutral, done in positive light, etc., has the potential of being really harmful. And not just harmful, but also really emotionally draining and really in some cases triggering, and in some cases just too much emotionally for your other players. And so here at Transplanar RPG, on these panels, as well as in our main campaign on Saturdays at 3 p.m. CST, we always use the X card, as well as a sort of code word that we've agreed upon, Banana Boat 45, as just a fun, lighthearted way to move on from what's happening and move away from conversations and topics that people are not comfortable with. And if it has something to do with more like things that are rooted in your character, that's why you have things like session zeros where all of the players and the GM can come together, talk about your characters and say, hey, this part of your character makes me feel uncomfortable. It doesn't seem like you're representing this culture in the way that is respectful, and you need to change this. Or this character touches upon some traumas or some things that I've been dealing with that I don't want to explore or see explored in this game, and that needs to change. And it's not, I would like it to change. It's not, please change. It needs to change because your personal safety is more important than any game you'll ever play. And that's that.
Snaps to that. Any final thoughts before we outro?
Words matter.
Words matter. Yeah.
We are responsible, those of us who have picked up the torch of being representatives of our cultures and experiences. We are responsible for the words that we use, the language that we use, how we talk to people. Because we talked about the why, we talked about the what, but how we talk to people in your native language or in other languages if you are fluent. How you talk to people really matters. And I am very passionate about what I consider irresponsible language, which is things we have normalized in our own cultures, in our own speech, in our own heads that we share with other people in our language exchanges that can also make things harder for them as well. So while it's important to check people and to educate people and to make sure that everyone is staying respectful of boundaries, it is also important to remember to be kind, to be empathetic, to be understanding, and to be prepared to make changes yourself to make it easier for other people to be comfortable with being authentic selves. There is always room to learn better and do better, especially when it comes to words. And again, I love words. I used to say I am in love with words because whether they are signed, whether they are written, whether they are spoken, they matter to that other person. So please be kind, be considerate, be empathetic, and be willing to learn better and do better. If this person does better with written aids and this person does better with a verbal description, you come to the middle at those session zeros and those discussions and figure out how you can make that table a welcoming place for everyone. And if you are running that table, your boundaries and your needs are just as important. So don't stay quiet when your voice has the potential of protecting yourself, because you are worth it.
Yes. If that's everything, I'm gonna go ahead and close this conversation, at least for now. Who knows if we're gonna do more of this? But Roll for Solidarity's third panel. Sorry, I forgot the title of it. Oh no, I don't have it up reference. Look over here. Language, Race, and Performance. Comes to a close. Thank you, everyone in chat, everyone for donating. We are now at $1,605 out of our current goal. Remember, our first goal was $1,000 over the course of the 2 days and 6 panels. We smashed that. We are going to continue on forward after this ends into tomorrow for more conversations. Thank you, chat. Thank you, everyone who has listened to all 3 panels today. Thank you, my panelists, Devin, Honey, Agatha, and Pi, for joining me in this conversation. Thank you to Connie, who is right now sitting invisible as a disembodied head. And is there anything else that I forgot, Connie, for our outro?
Yeah, maybe folks can just quickly drop their social links again. Maybe remind us of the projects y'all are working on so we can go send you all love and support.
We'll go back in the clockwise order, starting with Devin. You are muted.
Thank you, Discord. All right. Well, hello. My name is Devin. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the artistic director of Shout, Minnesota's all trans and gender diverse choruses. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Shout Minnesota. Also, join the official Discord for Transplanar RPG. We stream every Saturday at 3 p.m. CST. It's wonderful. We're all trans. We're so gay. You have no idea. And we have a lot of fun. So stop on by.
Oh, sorry. That brings us over to Honey.
Hello everyone, I'm Honey, aka Honey and Dice. You can find me on Twitter at Honey and Dice. You can find me on Instagram at Honey and Dice. There's just nothing on it Instagram. I just didn't want anybody to take the name. I run a botanical steampunk themed game on Sundays on my own Honey and Dice channel. At 6 p.m. Central Time. Called Clockwork Vines. I took Call of Cthulhu and basic roleplay, removed the elements that were harmful, added in some new ones that were floral themed, and created a world wherein we're in season 2. I run games, I write games, I play games, but really I'm mostly just passionate about being everyone's biggest cheerleader. So I tell people to remember to love your you, and if that's hard today, know that I love you. And that's about all that I do.
And that brings us to Pi.
Hi everyone, I am Pi. You can find me on most social media at the Fung Fu Pi. I am head producer for Dice Amazons, and we stream a little bit of everything most days of the week. I think our next stream coming up is on Sunday, where we're going to be playing some games, depending on what our Sith Lord and yours Candy decides. We look forward to seeing you all in online, in Discord, and in Twitch, and in Twitterverse, and anywhere. And have a good night, everyone.
And that brings us to Agatha.
Okay, so y'all again can find me on Twitch at AZNS Rep. That's Asians Represent AZNS Rep, where we stream every Friday. Our show, The Wrap Up, where we just talk about things from an Asian perspective. We have a rotating cast of guests who each bring they bring some good knowledge that they drop. So it's great. We also do Dungeons and Asians, which is GM'd by Daniel. That's like we used to use D&D. That's why it was called Dungeons and Asians. Now we use Quest, where we tell a story set in fantasy Asia that it's constantly being developed as we're going on, and it has really good research and a really interesting story. I play a shrimp on there, so if you want to see that, that's where it's at. And we are also a podcast, so if you want to hear the Dungeons and Asians, you can also find it on our Asians Represent podcast feed. And on Twitter, I'm Mighty Shrimp because of that shrimp character. That is correct. And that's Mighty Shrimp with 2 Ys.
Thank you, all of my lovely panelists in this conversation. Hello, my name is Christian. I go by Kappa in the TTRPG space. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheKappaChris, and my whole platform is all about uplifting marginalized voices through storytelling, through voice work. I do a little bit of everything: production, streams, whatever. If you liked what you saw from me today, again, give me a follow and on Twitter, and reach out for any projects, because I'm always looking for wonderful stuff like Roll for Solidarity to help with, and whether it be in the foreground or the background, I'm here for it. And I also want to throw out a special thank you to Connie once again for putting all of this together, making sure that we are having important conversations around representation and the TTRPG community. Thank you so much. And I will throw it over to you to close us out.
Thank you so much, Kappa. And can we show some appreciation to Kappa as well? Frickin' rock star on camera for frickin' 4.5 hours. That is a lot of time. Thank you so much for modding and for paneling, Kappa. You are amazing. Toss a coin to your Kappa, please, on Twitter, and to everyone else here. So just to close things out, panels 4, 5, and 6 are tomorrow, Thursday, May 20th, starting at 4 p.m. U.S. Central Time. The 3 panels are in order: curating, coping, and caring, where panelists discuss how they curate their spaces, cope with racism, and care for each other and themselves. Panel number 5, not your model minority. Panelists discuss how the model minority myth affects them as Asian and or Black creators in tabletop role-playing. And last but not least, the final panel in this 2-day event is sharing our truths, where panelists discuss an array of general questions about their lived experiences as Black and Asian creators in tabletop. We have amazing panelists and panel mods joining us for all 3 of those panels, and I am so excited to smash that 2K goal by the end of panel number 6. So on that high note, we love you all. Thank you for tuning into Roll for Solidarity Part 1. Tune in to Part 2 tomorrow at 4 p.m. U.S. Central Time on twitch.tv/transplanarrpg. And with that, I will transition us to our goodbye screen. Say bye-bye, everybody. Thank you so much, and stick around for a raid. Peace.